And good evening, everybody, and welcome back to this edition of the Meta Steel podcast. And to kick things off right now, in case anyone's been hiding under a rock, not really, no pun intended, but it's been an awesome weekend. It's been Christmas early for a lot of Steelers fans so far to kick off 2020, with the exception of the Steelers not being in the playoffs. But going into 2020, right now, outside from that, Steelers are being honored royally so far, if you ask me. Beginning this past Saturday with the surprise announcement, starting with Bill Cowher, who was the very first induction as a Centennial senior finalist going into the Canton Pro Football Hall of Fame. That was announced at the pregame prior to the start of the Baltimore Ravens and Tennessee Titans divisional round matchup. And then, of course, you got the next day, too. Jimmy Johnson, during halftime of the Packers-Seahawks game, he gets the news that he is going to the Hall of Fame. So you already have the two coaches already in the Hall of Fame. And then today we just learned of the three contributors who actually got in the Hall of Fame. I'm talking about none other than the late Steve Sable, voice, cameraman, and co-founder of NFL Films, who was the son of Ed Sable. Remember, he passed away in 2012 at the age of 69 due to brain cancer. Then you also have the previous commissioner prior to Roger Goodell, who succeeded Pete Rozelle. I'm talking about none other than commissioner from 1989 through 2005, Paul Tagliabue. He was the guy who founded NFL Europe, which began operations in 1991, deceased in 2007, and took a lot of controversy for the concussion issues over that time, but he had no work stoppages. And then one of the notable things he was mentioned for was after 9/11, he allowed football games to take a week off and then to return back in 2 weeks. So that was one other notable thing he did. And also, last but not least, aside from him, you also got George Young, two-time Super Bowl GM of the New York Giants, who spent there for 18 years, 1979 through 1997. And as, of course, the very one of the very first Hall of Fame inductees today, I believe it was the third name announced on Good Morning Football on NFL Network. Donnie Shell now becomes the 29th Steeler inducted into the Hall of Fame, and that makes it 10 from the Steel Curtain dynasty as a player. And right here with me to join this edition of the Meta Steel podcast to discuss the primary inductees. What does this mean for guys like strong safety Troy Polamalu and longtime guard and lineman Alan Faneca, who's also been a Super Bowl champion, 9 Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro, with Troy Polamalu being 8 Pro Bowls and 4 All-Pros. Joining me here right now, live on this edition, like I said, I got senior writer for at BTS Curtain. I'm talking about none other than Tony DeFeo. He can be followed on Twitter at DeFeoMan. Tony, it's been a long time. I hope Tony's been kicking off well for you. What's been all your reaction to these names so far? I mean, right now, the Steelers going into this year, if you really think about it, Troy Polamalu, as we found out, he made it to the finals. It almost seems like it should be a real likely chance he'll get on his first attempt. But people were still kind of like lingering on guys like Bill Cowher and, of course, Donnie Shell. And I'm not sure if Alan Faneca is going to have to wait as a result of this if Polamalu gets in. What's been your reaction so far to the news?
Hey, Charles. Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to all your listeners. It's been a good 2020 so far. I'm happy. As a Steeler fan, a long-time Steeler fan, I'm happy. By the news of Bill Cowher getting in last weekend and Donnie Shell today. I think for Donnie Shell it was a long time coming. Here's a guy who was a first-team All-Pro several times over, as you mentioned, for one of the greatest defenses of all time, and it was felt by many that he was kind of a victim of the Steeler bias for many years. 9 players from the 70s teams, those 4 Super Bowl winning teams, have been, they were enshrined in Canton a long time ago, and Donnie Shell's had to wait for his last year was 1987. So he's had to wait for 3 decades, and here's a guy who, when he retired in 1987, he was the all-time leader for strong safeties and interceptions for 51. So I think it was a long time coming for him. As for Bill Cowher, I mean, his resume speaks for itself. 149 regular season wins, 2 AFC Championship appearances or wins, 2 Super Bowl appearances, one Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl 40. Some people might say, well, he only got in because of the centennial selection process, that's the special process they're having this year for the NFL's 100th year anniversary. But his resume is right up there with guys like Tony Dungy and John Madden, and probably better than, if you consider he won a championship, probably better than guys like Mark Levy and Bud Grant, and they're all in the Hall of Fame. So I'm happy that those 2 got in. I think it's just a matter of time for Alan Faneca. I think Troy Polamalu is the first ballot Hall of Famer. It would shock me if he didn't get in this weekend, if he didn't get selected this weekend.
And I was just going to say right now, too, because considering that they do got like 2 more safeties in the Hall of Fame on the defensive back class ever for Canton, like I said, and one of the biggest things that's been thrown out there, especially more with a guy like Donnie Shell, was that a lot of people were getting tired of putting in guys from the 1970s Steel Curtain. It almost just seemed like it seemed to be an overwhelming selection process over the years, even though you had a few guys waiting between, like the likes of Lynn Swann, John Stallworth. Why do you think this year was like a little bit more different for Donnie Shell's case? I mean, yeah, they expanded the senior finalists to about 15. I mean, in actuality, I mean, you actually have like basically like in that group 10 players. What do you think was the finally convincing argument and the reason that he got in this year as opposed to other years?
Well, I think the centennial thing has certainly helped. Like you said, it's they've expanded it this year, and that certainly helps. But it's also, like I said, his resume is just too good to keep out of the Hall of Fame. I mean, here's a guy who played on 4 Super Bowl winning teams. He played on some of the greatest defenses ever, and he produced at a high level. And again, he retired with the most interceptions ever for a strong safety, and that's hard to do. 51. Even in that era, when teams were throwing the ball downfield more, and there was less of the West Coast offense influence, it still says something that he retired with the most interceptions as a strong safety. So, I just think it was going to happen sooner or later, and I think this is just as good a year as any because of the centennial celebration. I think that probably had something to do with it, but I think it was going to happen sooner or later. But just probably the centennial thing probably hastened the process and made it possible this year.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that was part of it, though, too. I mean, when you look at, guys, like going back to like Cowher, for example, I mean, one of the convincing arguments a lot of people would make with a guy like him was when you look at him, I mean, both him and Jimmy Johnson, to their respective credits, I mean, they were at a time, both their franchises, where they had a big drought of what like their glory days used to be, where it was like Chuck Noll, who was finally starting to run out of gas. I mean, he had like 4 more playoff appearances within his last 10 years before stepping down. And then, of course, you also have Jimmy Johnson, who came to the Cowboys with Jerry Jones, who actually both worked together back in college. They were able to come together and transform not only the franchise of the Cowboys, but the economy as well. So from those perspectives, I really feel like from those aspects, those are guys that were definitely really deserve their honor, if not for a long time coming, because other than that, a lot of people really looked at, they would probably had to been subdued to the normal process where they would have to wait a little bit longer.
Well, yeah, Bill Cowher, I mean, he had and both of those guys, really, and Jimmy Johnson, they had a a pretty tough task. They had to follow legends and Chuck Noll and Tom Landry. I mean, these two guys, they built two of the great teams of all time, and the Steelers and the Cowboys. I mean, these were two dynasties. Steelers obviously were a dynasty in the 70s. They won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years. They had 9 Hall of Famers. The Cowboys weren't far behind. I mean, they were basically a few plays away over the course of 20 years from maybe being the best dynasty in football history. And both of those organizations were really down in the dumps when Cowher and Johnson took over respectively, and that's not an easy task. And Cowher immediately, infused the Steelers organization with an energy that they hadn't seen in quite a while. I mean, he was obviously gregarious, charismatic. He was a players coach, and he took them to the playoffs his first year. He took them to the playoffs 6 straight years, and they took them to Super Bowl 30. He didn't win one in the 90s. He didn't win a Super Bowl in the 90s, but he came close several times. And the fact that he stuck around for 15 years and he stuck around long enough to finally win a title, I think that speaks a lot to what the organization thought of him. Because, so many teams, they have ownerships that put triggers, and they're impatient, and they're more willing to part ways with a coach if he hasn't gotten his team to the promised land, so to speak. And to the Rooney family's credit, they stuck with Cowher. They knew they had a good coach. He had some down years in the late 90s, but they stuck with him. They gave him a contract extension, I think, in 2000, and he was able to turn the franchise around, or bring the franchise back up to a championship contender again. They drafted Big Ben Roethlisberger in 2004. And they were able to win a title. As far as Jimmy Johnson, I mean, he was responsible for turning that franchise around pretty much all by himself, because he was basically the general manager too, as well as the head coach, and he was responsible for that Herschel Walker trade in '89 that brought in a flood of draft choices, and they used those draft choices to build that '90s dynasty that went 3 out of 4. Even the one that they won in '95 against the Steelers. I mean, Barry Switzer was the coach by then, because Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones had a parting of ways. But that was pretty much Jimmy Johnson had his fingerprints all over that team. So these two guys, they took over 2 legends, and they brought your organization glory, which says something, because that doesn't happen very often in professional sports.
Yeah, I think definitely when you look at those perspectives, I mean, it was definitely some key striking reasons right there why both those guys deserve to be in. But one could also make the argument, too, when we've been hearing it throughout their 10 years right now, and you look at right now, because right away, I think one of the first thoughts that came to mind was that with Bill Cowher getting in, a lot of people are probably looking at the numbers right now, and probably the voting will change a little bit in time. But if Cowher was able to get in after all this time, how do you think Mike Tomlin's chances are? Do you think it's something where he has to win at least one more ring if he's going to be like a no doubt first ballot Hall of Famer? Or what do you think the differences were? Because also one could argue on the other side too, if Bill Cowher would have had an established quarterback in the beginning versus going through the droughts of, say, a Bubby Brister, a Neil O'Donnell, Cordell Stewart, Mike Tomczak, he could have probably won a pair of Super Bowls and been a little bit sooner. To that, you say?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say that. I mean, but it was a time back then, too. I mean, franchise quarterbacks have always been important. They've always been very important for Super Bowl success, but I think it was a different game in the '90s, and he had some really, really strong. He put together some strong rosters back then, and they came up short. And the AFC Championship, he hosted 4 AFC Championship games in his career. I think there were 5, and he only got the Super Bowl twice, which I think is still a great accomplishment. But it's still, you can say, well, he came up short too. He underachieved too, even though he didn't have the franchise quarterback. As far as Mike Tomlin, I mean, there's always that perception that he won his one championship with players that were left over from the Bill Cowher era, but he's also a coach who has, he's rebuilt the franchise over the last decade and made it in his own image. And yeah, they haven't won a title in 11 years now, but they also haven't had a losing season, which is almost unheard of. Other than Bill Belichick, you can't really name another head coach that's never had a losing season over 13 years. So, does he need another title? I think maybe he might need one, because would Bill Cowher have gotten in without the centennial selection process? Maybe not. Maybe he would have had to wait a few more, or maybe many more years. So yeah, he might need another one, but the story has to be finished when it comes to Mike Tomlin too. Big Ben, he's coming back supposedly next year, presumably. So maybe if he could win another one, during the Big Ben era, maybe he that cements his legacy and gives him 2 Super Bowl titles, and when you combine the championships with his overall resume of his winning percentage, and again the fact that he hasn't had a losing record, I think that could strengthen his resume and get him into Canton, if not sooner, then definitely later.
Once again, we're being joined by writer for @BT Steel Curtain. That's on Twitter. You can follow them, Behind the Steel Curtain. Writer Tony DeFeo, you can follow him on Twitter @DefioMan. And speaking of which, let's swing things away around from the Hall of Fame talk, and let's get into some real situations right now here. One of the things, let's go into speaking of coaches, they just announced today on the Steelers website, first reported by Teresa Barley, Steelers finally got themselves a quarterback for the first time since 2017 in Matt Canada, who spent 26 years in the collegiate role as far as assistant coaching, quarterback coach, and offensive coordinator. One of the guys who's more notable for developing, who's now with the Indianapolis Colts and former New England Patriot backup to Tom Brady, Jacoby Brissett. As similar to how Keith Butler had Terrell Austin help out with the defense, how vital do you think this was to having a quarterback coach in the event if Ben Roethlisberger is not ready to go and you had to go roll with Mason Rudolph, Devlin Hodges, or possibly a veteran quarterback to help Randy Fichtner's status as OC?
I think it's huge. I was very pleased with the hire because Matt Canada, he's a pretty good offensive mind. He was Pitt's offensive coordinator in 2016, and he helped develop Nate Peterman. Nate Peterman probably has Matt Canada to thank for his professional football career. So I like it, and from what I'm hearing is Canada is basically he was hired to help bring along the likes of Mason Rudolph and possibly Devlin Hodges if he's still here next year. Because Randy Fichtner, he's his duties as offensive coordinator, are such that he wouldn't be able to spend time, as much time with them as he would with developing a game plan and working with Ben Roethlisberger and figuring out a way to win football games. So I think this is huge for developing, especially Mason Rudolph, who obviously he had a lot of reps last year. He had like 8 or 9 starts, in place of an injured Roethlisberger, and he also didn't have a quarterbacks coach to help tutor him. So I think it's gonna help him as he enters his 3rd year in the NFL in 2020.
Do you think that with the Steelers missing the playoffs this year, do you really think this was so vital for Tomlin to really stick a fork in the road and make the playoffs without Ben? I mean, do you think probably this hurt any at all if his credibility? I mean, because you were literally at 8-5 1 point back in the season, only 2 wins away from clinching the playoffs after the Titans lost back on week 15. How important do you think it's now, just like I said, if Ben Roethlisberger still isn't ready to go, that he can at least prove he could win without Ben? Because let's face it, Ben was a big part of his career and a huge relief in a lot of ways for start of his coaching career. A lot of stuff he's did off to the side.
Well, I think it was an impressive. The final 3 weeks were unfortunate. I mean, the offense basically hit a wall. Beginning with the Buffalo game in week 15, and they only scored 30 points the last 3 games. But at the same time, they were also down to in Devlin Hodges, an undrafted free agent that didn't even make the team out of training camp. They had to sign him, after the start of the regular season, and you're down to that guy because you lost Roethlisberger in week 2, and then Mason Rudolph struggled, and after he started, he was okay after he started in week 3, but he eventually started. He hit a wall himself late in the year, and they had to put Hodges back in, and then Hodges struggled. So they put Mason Rudolph back in, but then he got injured in week 16, so he was out for week 17. So there are a lot of problems. It's a long way of saying there are a lot of problems with the quarterback position last year. So for them to be 8-5 in the first place, I think it was a pretty remarkable accomplishment when you look at what happens to other teams when they lose their starting quarterback, their franchise quarterback. You look at the 49ers 1 year earlier. Jimmy Garoppolo, he suffered a major knee injury earlier in the year, and they were a double-digit loss team. The Ravens a few years ago, they lost Joe Flacco to an ACL injury, and they lost 11 games. So it's almost unheard of what they were able to do. Even to go into week 17, still alive for the playoffs was pretty unheard of. So I think, even though they kind of faded out by the end of the year, I think the 2019 season strengthened Tomlin's reputation more than it hurt it overall.
And also, too, one thing right now, Art Rooney expressed pretty good confidence that he expects Kevin Colbert to return to the Steelers organization. He's been expressive since August. He's currently 63 years old right now. He wants to do things like year to year. Art Rooney definitely wants to keep him around, but they've been seeming to coming to a mutual agreement. We're hearing names right now. If he were to step away and leave the franchise in a good spot, one of the 2 names I keep hearing that keeps popping up is Omar Khan and Brandon Hunt. Real quickly, beginning with Omar Khan. He's definitely been there for a while too. He's been assisted to Colbert as far as like working marvelous things with the cap, as well as helping out on the player side. He was a director of football administration and seemed to have pretty good system in place. Can you tell the Steeler Nation and the fans out there that we may not know about Omar Khan in particular if his time were to come with this organization?
Well, Omar Khan, he's basically been a wizard as far as working, as you mentioned, working the salary cap over the past decade. They had a lot of huge contracts, especially coming off the previous decade when they went to 3 Super Bowls. And they had a lot, James Harrison, Lamar Woodley, Ben Roethlisberger, Hines Ward, you name it. They had a lot of huge contracts, a lot of players they had to pay. And when those players got old, meaning Harrison, Woodley, guys like Brett Kiesel, I can go Troy Polamalu, Ike Taylor, a lot of big contracts, and usually when those players when they retire, that's a lot of dead money on the cap, and they were able to massage the cap and keep the team relevant. They haven't had a losing season since 2003, and that's pretty remarkable considering they had a lot of veterans get old around the same time. Usually when that happens, the team falls off the cliff. So I think he's more than capable of if Kevin Colbert were to retire this year or next year or anytime in the near future, they would be in good hands with a guy like Omar Khan. He's thought of very highly, not only within the Steelers organization, but within the NFL.
So, with that being said, what will be your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 if Colbert does walk away and we have someone like Omar Khan, who you just talked about a moment ago, where would you rate it as far as him like keeping this team going forward? 1 to 10, what would you mark it at?
Oh, I'd say a strong eight for sure. I mean, obviously, I don't. He would have to. He still would have to step in and show that he can do the job. But the fact that he's been able to do the job that he's done now for such a long period of time, I think. Again, I think that speaks volumes. So I have no doubt that he'd be able to step into Kevin Colbert's shoes and continue what he's done for the past 20 years.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be no secret on that. But real quickly, I want to just get your thoughts on a few other a few guys real quick coming up here. I mean, with it being the off season coming up right now, Steelers are definitely going to have some decisions to be making. I mean, this year as far as like with free agents and who they could like keep around. And, I've been usually like listening to 93.7 The Fan. And one of the biggest guys that comes up, and just give me some quick one word answers. They stick around, they franchise them, they release them. I'll start with number one, who Mike Tomlin mentioned in his year end press conference. Bud Dupree, we want to make him a priority. Does he get the tag? Does he get an extension? Or do they decide to part ways ultimately?
I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm going to say franchise tag.
Franchise tag. Okay. Next up, Anthony Chickalo. This guy who's been around a solid backup since 2016. He's going to count $6 million towards cap this season. It could potentially save $5 million by cutting Chickalo. Uh, Stay or away.
I'm going to say wave.
Wave. Okay. Choose our skipper. A guy who went undrafted last season, signed an exclusive rights free agent futures contract. I know he's got a future contract. He'll be on the practice squad, but ultimately, what do you think is like his horoscope?
Well, I think the fact that they brought him back, he had a great training preseason last year. I think he had 5 sacks in 4 games. So I think, if they're going to cut Chickalo, that's probably because they think that Skipper's going to be, he has a future as at least a solid backup for them. So I think he's gonna take a huge step next year.
Okay. Next up, we got is Vance McDonald coming up. This is a guy right now who's in his 30s. He appeared in 14 starts this year. He's going to be carrying a cap hit of 7.1 million. Steelers could save like roughly about 6 million. Do you think they go with the younger guy and Zach Gentry and try and sign someone via trade or free agency?
Actually, I think they're going to keep him around because I think they feel like if Ben comes back, the window's still open for a championship. So I think that you really have nothing. You mentioned Zach Gentry, who's pretty much unproven, and Nick Vanette's a free agent. Not that he's really much of anything either. So I think they're gonna keep him around next year.
Okay, and then also last name I'm gonna bring up real quick, and then we gotta move along here. Right now, Alejandro Villanueva, who returns, who right now he's been like a long time veteran right tackle, I believe it was for the Steelers right now. What do you think happens with him?
I think he sticks around. I think from what I understand, he played better than people gave him credit for last year. So I think he sticks around for one more year.
Alrighty. Well, hey, once again, Tony, thanks again for joining here. Again, happy belated New Year to you as well. It's definitely, like I said, I mean, if not being in the playoffs, it's been hearing some wonderful news with the announcements, guys going to Canton. I don't know about you, but you have any plans of trying to make the trip down there to at least the induction ceremony?
I don't have any plans right now, but I would love to go down there and be part of that atmosphere. It's going to be great. I think you're going to have obviously at Cower and Shell. I think you're going to have at least one out of the Steelers. I think it's going to be a very Steelers centric weekend. So I would love to be part of it.
No doubt about it. Well, Tony, once again, you take care of my man. Tony DeFeo, he is a senior writer for Behind the Steel Curtain. You can follow him on Twitter at DuffioMan, Man, as well as follow Behind the Steel Curtain at BT Steel Curtain. Tony, always been a pleasure. I look forward to catching up with you down the road. enjoy the free time that you've got, and let's talk some exciting news. Hopefully around draft time and later on in the season. Hopefully, it'll be a better result than the last 2 years.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks again, Charles. And it was great talking to you. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Likewise, my man. Take
Take
care.
care.
And once again, that was Tony DeFeo behind the steel curtain. Yeah, I just wanted to apologize right now. Had some comments here. Yeah, Ernie, sorry about that. Just having a little bit of mic trouble, I think, with the guest. So I apologize for that if you're having any trouble hearing. Just so you guys know, after I do these live streams, I will podcast it. So you guys can check me out on Mixcloud if you guys want. I got a Mixcloud account, which I usually do edit down my podcast. You can follow me on Mixcloud if you guys want to look me up. I am Charles John Ritchie. That's Richey. I'll definitely be sharing it after I do these live streams. So feel free to check in and feel free to check in during the live talks. Just I'm definitely going to try to figure something out with the guests. So I do apologize for anyone watching out there having a little hard time hearing Tony. Tony, I apologize to you as well. But yeah, so I really think this has been a good start real quick here. I got Cody Abney. Hey, what's up, Steelers brother? Thank you very much for liking and commenting on the show. Like I said, I mean, this has been a very impressive start. I mean, to the Hall of Fame process. I mean, the Steelers right now, who got 29 total in the Hall of Fame, which they are six among that, and I think they're about two more away from the Rams. The Rams just have one more minor guy from the Jets. But as far as like the rest of the people who got in on the senior finalists that was announced today on Twitter and of course NFL Network, Good Morning Football. Here are the other guys that got in as far as like the Centennial class. He had Eagles wide receiver and tight end Harold Carmichael, who played 14 seasons, four-time Pro Bowler, and 1980 Walter Payton Man of the Year. He was a member of the 1970s All-Decade Second Team. Also, big shout out and congratulations to Bears left tackle Jimbo Covert, who played on the 85 team, Super Bowl champion, played 8 seasons, two-time Pro Bowler, and a two-time All-Pro, member of the 1980s All-Decade team. You also had the last of the safeties for right now, pending Troy Polamalu, which can make it 16. Packers left and right safety Bobby Dillon, who played 8 years, who was a four-time Pro Bowler and four-time All-Pro. Then he was also a member of the 1950s All-Decade team. Raiders wide receiver Cliff Branch, who played 13 seasons, three-time Super Bowl champion, four-time Pro Bowl, three-time All-Pro, member of the 1970s All-Decade Second Team. Jets left tackle and right tackle Winston Hill, who actually played for 16 seasons, Super Bowl champion of the Super Bowl III Jets that shocked the world against Don Shula's Baltimore Colts under Joel Namath's guarantee. Eight-time Pro Bowler, and he was a member of the 1960s All-Decade Second Team. Lions left defensive tackle Alex Karras, who played 12 seasons, suspended 1 year for gambling on games, four-time Pro Bowler, three-time Pro Bowler. He's been deceased for a while now. Member of the 1960s All-Decade team. Then you also got Chicago Cardinals right tackle Duke Slater, who played 10 seasons who played with the Cardinals. Then you also got Browns left end Max Speedy, who played 7 seasons, one-time NFL champion, four-time AAFC champion, two-time Pro Bowl, and three-time All-Pro, as well as 1940s All-Decade team. Member of those classic Browns teams prior to the pre-Super Bowl era and pre-NFL team. Then you also have Bears defensive end, right end Ed Sprinkle, who's a former NFL champion, four-time Pro Bowler, member of the 1940s All-Decade team. Then of course you had the contributors who got in there. The voice and co-founder of NFL Films, Ed Sable, passed away in 2012 at the age of 69. Great guy. I love to hear his voice, his work. You also have Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, who's in the season for 17 years, founder of NFL Europe, which only lasted for 17 seasons, and no work stoppage, kept the Saints in New Orleans, and of course Giants GM George Young, who spent 18 seasons winning 2 Super Bowls with the New York Giants. Very famous for drafting Lawrence Taylor and bringing in Bill Parcells. And right now, let's get into fair foul real quick. Rapid fire right now. with the Steelers placing linebacker Ryan Shazier on the physically unable to perform list the last 2 seasons. Steelers unable to total his contract again to delay it. His playing career is winding down. I'm going to have to say fair on that because right now, if he wants to still stay in the Steelers facility, they may have to keep on payroll in another capacity, maybe a different type of job. So I'm not sure if he's going to return playing career at this point. We'll see. I hope he does, but if not, I'm more glad for this guy's health first and foremost. And then last one, if Troy Polamalu gets in on his first attempt, this will be the last Steelers player for a long while to get on his first attempt. I'll have to say fair on that one as well because Ben Roethlisberger, it's not no guarantee he'll get on his first ballot. I do think he's a Hall of Famer as far as first ballot when you consider the age of quarterbacks he had to play around with. But when you look at his contemporaries versus like Eli Manning, Philip Rivers, I mean, his stats are right up there. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Men of Steel podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at PrideRichie, at Men of Steel CGR, Instagram, Men of Steel Nation, and of course, my YouTube channel, Men of Steel Podcast. I want to say thank you to Tony for joining me here. And as always, leave it. Don't be trolling, be rolling. Here we go, sirs. Here we go. I gone.